The global release of Umamusume Pretty Derby English is finally around the corner. I can't believe we live in a timeline where this game is out before Silksong, but here we are. It feels a bit like getting a season 2 to No Game No Life or a new season of Hatarake Mao-sama that didn't suck. If you're interested in anything Umamusume, then you've come to the right place. This will be the first video of a 3-part series where we prepare for the game's launch. And this video will serve as an introduction to those who haven't seen the game before or have very little knowledge of what the game's about. Quick disclaimer, the information in this video is based on my experience with the Taiwanese version of the game, and may differ from the actual English release. It's extremely unlikely that the gameplay or banner order of the EN version would be different on release, and we'll get to why in a second. Here's a bit about me as well. I'm the idiot on Twitch who used to dual-wield Umamusume accounts back in the day. And I'm the proud owner of an ungodly amount of horse plushies. I've also paid many visits to a local race course and participated in a live Umamusume event there. That being said, I'm just a casual fan and am by no means an expert at the game. I know this video has a lot to take in, so I'll be leaving some timestamps for each section in the pinned comment below. Feel free to skip to whichever part you fancy, or revisit this video in the future. If you find this video helpful, consider liking it, and remember there's more to come. If you're interested in Umamusume, chances are you might have seen some emotional clips from the anime, or read the name on the gacha revenue chart and had no clue what that's about, or saw Hololive members lose their minds over it. The Japanese mobile game was originally scheduled to release alongside its anime adaptation in 2018, but after some delay, the game was released in February of 2021 in Japan only. 16 months later, its Korean and Taiwanese versions arrived in June of 2022. There was also an attempt at publishing the game in mainland China, but we don't talk about that one. That's a story for another day. As of the making of this video, there are also a total of 7 anime titles. If you're interested to learn more about the Umamusume universe, I highly recommend watching these in release order. Simply think of the series as a cute girls do cute things sports anime with a sprinkle of gut wrench. There's also an official YouTube channel for this series, with fan favorite Gorudo Shippu as the VTuber host of the channel. This is also where you'd find the in-house anime series produced by Cygames Pictures, game trailers, concert videos, and Let's Plays. Just check out the Let's Plays. They're videos of voice actresses playing games in character. They're very cool. There's also a casual Umamusume party game called Party Dash, which came out in August last year, but I don't really know enough about it to talk about it, so moving on. Personally, I started playing on the Taiwanese server after seeing season 1 of the anime, and I've never played on the Japanese version. There's a surprisingly sizable presence of EN gamers on the current JP server, and frankly, they'd be more qualified to talk about the game than some Chinese casual like me. So I'll be leaving some useful links to the English guides and resources in the description below. In the meantime, I hope this video gets you somewhat excited for when the game releases on the 26th of June. So you might be wondering, what makes Umamusume stand out among all other gacha games as one of the most profitable and successful titles in Japan? Why do all the characters in the anime have such strange names? The answer lies in the horse racing scene of Japan. Now this might sound a bit boring, but I'd be a fool not to mention the biggest charm Umamusume has. Every waifu in the fictional story of the game is a parallel to a real horse in our real world, down to their names, outfits, personalities, wins, and losses. Even the genders of their real-life counterparts can be identified by seeing which ear the accessory is on. We're talking legendary names from one of the most popular sporting events in Japan. Besides, every single racetrack in the game is modeled after the actual venue these races take place in, accounting for the slopes and curves and how they may affect each race. All of this is calculated by the physics engine of the game. While this amount of realism might not mean a lot to us outside of Japan, it's a game that takes horse racing culture quite seriously. And as players, we get to rewrite the history of some of these beloved horses and give those who are less fortunate a happier ending. If you've seen the anime, I think you'd know what I mean. And for those of you from Twitch chat wondering how these Umamusumes reproduce, it really isn't clear. But canonically within their universe, there are no such animals as horses, only horse girls. Now imagine a school where all Umamusumes study as student athletes. That's the setup for the game. In it, you'll play as the anime equivalent of this guy, a coach who trains these horse girls to be as competitive as they can be. By triggering events during their training sessions, you collect lore bit by bit for each Umamusume and get to know them better. All these characters will also have their own stories, while events typically revolve around a handful of them. For players who are in it only for the gameplay, don't worry. There's a convenient auto-skip button for all of the lore, so you don't have to sit through any of it. What I haven't mentioned up till this point is that these Umamusumes are also idols. Yeah, that's canonically part of their racing gig. After every race, a concert is held where the winners take center stage. There's also a version of every song sung by every voice actress behind all the girls. That alone is quite impressive to me. Enough talk about the story though, let's move on to the actual gameplay. Umamusume is fundamentally a roguelite mobile gacha game, with PvE and PvP modes for additional daily, weekly, and monthly rewards. We'll be going over all of these aspects one by one. First, a roguelite is a genre of video games that possesses some but not all elements of roguelikes. Wow, okay, thanks for nothing, Wiki. Essentially, most events you trigger are determined by RNG, and you deal with whatever's given to you. This refers to the biggest portion of the game, the training game mode, or what I'd like to call campaigns. Okay, so after typing out the entire script, I realized this game mode should have its own video, which will come after this one. So I'll just leave a TLDR description here. Realistically, you'll get the hang of it the moment you pick up the game, but there are some key ideas you should keep in mind from the very beginning. Basically, you start by choosing an Umamusume you want to train for the run. You'll be picking her parents, and 6 support cards that shape the outcome of the run. When the run begins, you'll be given 72 turns, where you decide what your Umamusume does. The parents determine the base stats of the run, while the cards determine how much stats you get per turn. The setup of both also changes the skills that are available to learn in the run. In each turn of a run, you'll be making a choice. You can have your Umamusume train to raise a particular stat, take them to races so they can gain more fans, invite them to hang out to improve their mood, give them a break to restore energy, or take them to the infirmary to recover from negative statuses. The ultimate goal is to make these 6 numbers as massive as they can be, while picking up some useful skills along the way. For example, if you want your Umamusume to have higher max speed, bring in speed cards and choose the speed training option. For simplicity's sake, I'm making these decisions sound a lot more linear than they really are, but you can think of this as a bit of a resource management game. Most actions will use up this energy bar, so you need to make the best use of the energy you currently have before regenerating some by resting. These choices can be tricky sometimes, influenced by many factors, but generally speaking, here's what you want to do. First, consider improving the mood of your Umamusume. There are 5 mood levels, and the highest one gives you a considerable performance boost. A 20% improvement in training outcomes, and a 4% stat boost during races. To do that, you can either hang out with your Umamusume, get lucky with a random event that gives you a free mood up, or get reliable guaranteed mood ups based on the script of the campaign. Ideally, this mood should be kept at the highest level at all times, and the best time to get there is in the beginning few turns of the run. Next, you should empower your deck of 6 support cards in the early game to maximize their multipliers. To do this, simply pick training options with their icons. The more the merrier. Even though the cards are tied to one specific training facility, they can still hop around to other training options, which makes crazy lineups possible. After each turn, the friendship meter of those you've chosen will increase. The ultimate goal is for all these meters to hit orange. Once the bar becomes orange, whenever the card shows up on their respective training facility, the button becomes rainbow and the stat boost becomes greater. Eventually, you can snowball your stats till the end. Remember, bigger number, better waifu. We'll talk about specific stat requirements for each Umamusume in the next video. Each time you train, the game would give you a preview of the outcome, including how much energy it uses and the chance of it failing. The less energy you have, the more likely it'd fail. When you fail, not only does the mood of your Umamusume goes down, she would also receive a stat decrease and a negative status. In the worst case scenario, you'd have to burn one turn to get rid of the negative status at the infirmary, and another turn to go hang out with her to fix her mood. That's 3 unproductive turns in a row. While failing once or twice isn't necessarily run ending, most good runs should not warrant any risk-taking. Personally, I gamble a lot with these training options, but in general, you should think extra hard if the fail chance is 15% or more. During the run, you can also pick up skills for your Umamusume. To do that, you go into the Skills tab to learn skills using skill points at any time during the run. That skill pool presented to you is determined by the Umamusume you're training, the genes of the parents, the random events that occur based on the cards you bring in, as well as the campaign you chose for the run. Each skill has a different trigger and a different effect. For example, yellow skills are related to speed, blue skills are related to stamina, and green skills are related to the conditions of the races. During the run, you encounter events that give you discounts on the skills, so my general advice is to never touch this tab until the end of the run. That being said, there are many exceptions to this rule. If you're having trouble getting to the end of the run, you should never worry about the skill point economy. Finishing the run should take priority over optimal skill point management. The key takeaway here is that you only take skills mid-run before a difficult race if you know you'll struggle. And to know whether you'll struggle or not, you just have to play the game a lot. Speaking of difficult races, let's talk about them. You'll forget about this once you've got hundreds of runs under your belt, but the campaigns will always give you a list of goals to complete. If you fail to meet any of the goals, your run ends. Almost all these goals require you to race and get good results from them. To participate in these races, you'll need to have a certain amount of fans, and to clear the fans check, you'll need to perform well in races. So, to summarize, you should win every race. Not only does that allow you to make progress in the run, it also gives you a good amount of stats that you wouldn't want to miss out on. Like I said, you'll forget that goals even exist once you know what you're doing, because clearing them should be a piece of cake. There are exceptions, however, because some Umamusumes have more challenging goals than others, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Finally, let's briefly talk about the RNG events. RNG events are events that may or may not trigger between each turn. Most of them give you free stats or a free skill without question, while other ones give you the choice between up to 5 outcomes, each giving you different benefits. You have close to no control over what shows up, but some of those choices do have significant impact on your run. The rule of thumb here should be, go top option if you're presented with 2 choices, but please take it with a grain of salt. Usually, when an event is triggered from one of your 6 cards, the top option gives you a general benefit that works with any Umamusume, while the bottom option gives you a more specific reward that may or may not be useful for your case. It's also important to experiment with these options, and we'll go over some examples in the next video. After each run, you get a copy of the Umamusume you've trained, and you can find her in your inventory. Her stats and skills can no longer be changed once the run ends, and her overall strength is quantified by a rating. On top of that, she'll receive a set of genes. The genes are where meta progression happens outside of training, since your next training target could potentially inherit them if you choose her as a parent. Again, what genes they get are determined almost exclusively by RNG. I'd say in most scenarios, genes are more important than the rating you get. The inheritance system of the game deserves its own guide video, so for now, just know that this type of slow meta progression exists. The more runs you do, the more likely you can get ahead in the gene game, the stronger your Umamusumes will be. And like all other mobile games, training requires energy, or in this case, 30 training points. That being said, trust me when I say you won't really feel the effects of it at launch. The game will give you tons of energy drinks, which are items that give you exactly 30 TP to start a new run with. Another important thing to note is that a new campaign is added to the training mode every 6 months as part of the live service to keep things fresh. Some introduce new gimmicks and intuitive mechanics to the existing gameplay I've just described, while others change the meta drastically. This is also why I predict no changes to the banner release schedule of the game, because that would simply ruin the game's balance. We're talking about stuff that happens next year, so don't worry about it now. The only thing you need to know is that new campaigns will always give your Umamusumes better strength and ratings. While different campaigns change up the nuances of training mode, the core mechanics that I've described just now remains the same. I understand that roguelites aren't for everybody, especially those who dislike everything RNG. Frankly speaking, if you don't like this game mode, you might want to sit this game out. At the launch of the game, each run will take 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how familiar you are with the flow, and you'll be going through a lot of runs. I'd encourage everybody watching this video to try the game out first, since rarely do we see this roguelite game mode paired with the mobile gacha genre. It's also worth noting that this training game mode, like some other turn-based games, doesn't require much skill and is very easy to pick up. There's almost always a best choice every turn because the goal of each run should be very clear. Where the high skill ceiling really comes from is with the setup of each run. What cards to bring, what genes to consider, and which Umamusume to work with. Moving on, let's talk about the racing game mode. When I say racing game mode, I don't mean the races you do during the training game mode. It's on a completely different tab featuring PvE dailies, PvP weeklies, and PvP monthlies. During launch, PvE will be your stable source of income for currencies you need to build your Umamusumes and support cards. You earn gold coins or support points by letting one of your Umamusumes compete in a set race. There's a limit to how much you can earn per day, so remember to use up these tickets daily. Training 2 Umamusumes specifically for these two types of races should be your account's priority. In any case, it takes time to get better Umamusumes with the slow gene grind meta progression, so don't feel bad for not unlocking the harder game modes right off the bat. There will also be another PvE mode where you race against a strong rival among other NPCs. For this, you'll get a currency which, if you collect enough of, gives you the rival Umamusume for free. I don't think this will come out immediately at launch, but I believe this will be the first challenging game mode for most players. Next up, we've got the weekly PvP. It's a game mode where you compete with another player one-on-one for a score. Depending on the highest score you get by the end of the week, you either stay in your bracket, advance to a higher one, or drop to a lower one. The bracket you end up in will determine the rewards you get that week. There are 6 brackets in total, ranging from Class 1 being the worst to Class 6 being the best. Reaching Class 6 should be highly achievable, but don't be discouraged if you can't stay in that bracket, because that's where all the dolphins and whales should be. All things considered, this is just your typical PvP mode you find in most Japanese gacha games, where the goal isn't to sweat, but to get some participation rewards. Each time you PvP, a racing point will be spent. But unlike PvE tickets, they regenerate over time throughout the day. This PvP mode also gives you the goals for training mode, since you'll need a total of 15 different Umamusumes to compete at a time. You'll need 3 for each of the 5 categories of races. These categories are short distance, 1 mile, medium distance, long distance, and dirt respectively. Since the Umamusumes all have different strengths and weaknesses, you'll be training those suitable for each type of race. At the start of the game, you might not even have 15 unique Umamusumes to fill the slots, let alone 3 that are best in slots for each of the 5 categories. So, your initial goal is to train 1 per category. In general, the more skills your Umamusumes use, the more you score. I won't go into the details for how these scores are calculated for PvP, but the total rating does play a role in matchmaking. The better the opponents, the more points you'll get when you win, so you'd eventually want 15 relatively competitive, highly rated Umamusumes for this game mode alone. Again, we'll talk about the best lineups for each type of race in another video. Later on, there'll be another PvP game mode, the Monthly Cup. Now this is where things get spicy and players get sweaty. You can think of this as the real deal. As a previous Umamusume tourist, I knew this game mode wasn't for me and I never took it seriously. That being said, I believe this is the focus for 80% of players who have done their groundwork and have a good understanding of how the game works. Each month, a new cup will be announced, including information on the racetrack and conditions of the race. Based on these conditions, you can tailor train 3 Umamusumes to compete before the cup officially starts. For this game mode, you'll be matched with 2 other players in real time, with 9 Umamusumes competing per race. You win as long as the Umamusume in the first place is yours. Within each cup, there are 2 leagues, Great League and Open League. Great League is what everybody should choose because the other one's for babies. Within the league, there are 2 brackets. I won't go into details for how the brackets work now, but assuming you make it to the end, you'll be given a title for which bracket you end up on. Being good at this game mode does give you some extra stuff, but it's nothing crazy. And even if you don't do well, you'll still receive participation rewards. While the weekly and monthly PvP modes work similarly, the requirements for Umamusumes are drastically different. I think it's a little silly going over the details of PvP when the game isn't even out, so for the time being, just know that you'll need 15 Umamusumes for clearing weekly content, and 3 specialized Umamusumes for sweaty monthly stuff. While PvP is always a silly idea for pay-to-win gacha games, I'd say the one in Umamusume is fun enough for you to forgive and forget. It feels so good to root for a waifu you've spent a lot of time perfecting, and seeing them dominate the competition or simply winning by a hair is nothing short of exhilarating. Strictly speaking, you also don't need to be the best to win, thanks to its matchmaking and easily acquired participation rewards. Historically, after one of the major updates, a custom PvP game mode was added to the game, where any player can host simulated matches with the registered Umamusumes from your guild, or set up real-time matches by generating a lobby code, allowing up to 16 players to join at a time. I think that alone kinda redeems the silliness of gacha PvP. This is also a good time to say that when the JP version was adapted in the Taiwanese version I play, some of the quality of life changes got pushed forward in the release roadmap, so there's a chance that this custom game function might be immediately available for Umamusume EN, but please take this with a massive jar of salt. Speaking of guilds, yes, they exist. You'll receive rewards based on how high your guild ranks among other guilds by the end of each month. The rank is determined by how active the members are and subsequently the points they accumulate doing things like training or PvP, for example. You get to share a chat with your guildmates from which you can request for Umamusume level up materials. You're rewarded for donating, so people tend to be very generous. Unlike other AAA titles, gacha games don't compete for your 8-hour-long game sessions on the weekends. Instead, they want you to log in for a little bit every day. So for most of us, how much time do you need per day to do dailies determines how nice the game feels to play. To summarize, this is what the daily gameplay loop looks like. First, you do your PvE dailies by spending tickets. Then, you might as well do some weekly PvP. After that, check out the guild and donate some items requested by your guildmates. Then, spend 30 minutes to train at least one Umamusume. By then, you would have finished all the daily missions. When the events drop, it's the same thing, except you're incentivized to spend a little more TP and RP every day. If I were to draw a line representing gacha games from most to least demanding, I'd say Umamusume is on this less demanding side of the spectrum, to the point where logging in every day doesn't feel like a necessity. Okay, that's probably a little copium for free-to-play players, but this game really doesn't feel like a part-time job. However, if you're also on a spectrum and would like to play this for 8 hours on a weekend, nobody's stopping you. Alright, I've yapped enough about the gameplay. It's time we tackle the gacha part of the gacha game. There are two types of banners in Umamusume. The first is the character gacha. The highest rarity straight from the gacha is 3 stars. During their gacha animation, their gates are rainbow. Following the same logic, 2 stars will have golden gates, while 1 star will have silver gates. The character banner has really cool gacha animations. I've played a ton of gacha games in the past, and no other gacha animation comes close to the hype you feel when your waifu comes running at you, after the gate changes color from silver to gold to rainbow. Near Clouds is also very cool too, but yeah, I won't spoil you of what unique animations there are to indicate when rainbows come, because it's more fun seeing them for the first time. The second type of banner is the support card gacha. Much like the characters, the cards come in 3 different rarities: SSR for rainbow, SR for gold, and R for silver. Color changes are also possible during this animation. For both these banners, the rates are identical. The rainbow rate is 3%. Golds have an 18% chance of appearing, and silvers make up the rest of the 79%. The rate-up rainbows will have a 0.75 chance of showing up, which means every time you see a rainbow, it's a 75% chance you don't get the thing you want, and you want to pull your hair out. The same applies when there are multiple rate-ups in the same banner. They each get 0.75%. And the rest of the non-rate-up rainbows share the 1.5%. This is the classic decent rarity rates, awful rate-up situation, where you'll likely get lots of rainbows, but very few hits the target. Although there's no concept of pity for rainbows, you gain a point for every pull you do. Once you reach 200 points, you'll be able to trade them in for the rate-up item of your choice. In a sense, that makes 200 pulls the hard pity. More importantly, these points don't carry over to the next banner, so you either go broke or go home. Since each pull costs 150 gems, you'll need 30,000 gems to guarantee a copy of the rainbow rarity item you want. Another important mechanic to understand is that there's no such thing as standard banners. Both the rate-up characters and the cards enter the next banners and stay there forever. You can argue that this isn't all bad, since you could pick up what you've missed in the past, but anything you deem bad would ultimately dilute the banner. To make it clear, you should only pull for something you want when it's the rate-up item on the banner. Trying to get lucky with a diluted banner is very foolish. Before we move on, I just want to say, waifu over meta. This is the healthiest mindset you can have playing gacha games. With that out of the way, let's do a quick round of gacha Q&A. I'll be presenting everything in good news, bad news format from the eyes of a meta cook. If you don't care about the meta and you're playing the game for the story and waifus, don't let this PSA change your mind. But if you're playing to win, just remember I'm saving the best news for last. How pay to win is Umamusume? Okay, I'm just gonna get the bad news out of the way. If you think Hoyo games are expensive, get a load of this. You need 5 copies of certain cards to be competitive in the game. That's a card with 4 dupes. Yeah, it's bad. I know there's way worse gacha rates out there, but to me, having to get multiple copies of the same thing is horrible enough. I'm not saying you can't enjoy the game without getting dupes, but the meta cards make a drastic difference on how well you can perform, and each support card has different thresholds that make it good enough. For example, this Kitasan Black SSR Speed card requires at least 3 duplicates to be better than a regular SR Speed card with 4 duplicates. However, Kitasan Black with 4 duplicates can carry your account for a very, very, very long time. Needless to say, this game is severely pay to win. Now, let me play devil's advocate and do a bit of damage control. First, remember how each run requires 6 support cards? The 6th one must be borrowed from another player. So as long as you have 1 whale in your friends list, that card is guaranteed best in slot. Still, you'll want cards of your own to fill the remaining 5 spots. I understand that that's a massive red flag for most people, especially Western gacha gamers, but I stand by the fact that the gameplay is genuinely very fun, and you can still crush your whale competition with game knowledge and copium. I can also easily say that you can clear all content in this game as a free-to-play player, which is true for anything PvE. But that doesn't make for a very strong argument when the game's best content revolves around PvP. If you find the gameplay loop fun, Just disregard PvP and you'll still have a wonderful time, just like I did back in the day. And for all the free-to-play meta cucks out there, I guarantee you there's a way to maximize your enjoyment of the game, and I'll get into that shortly. For now, let's hear a bit of good news. Do I need duplicates of meta characters? Fortunately, the same about the support cards cannot be said for characters. You only need one single copy of an Umamusume to make her your waifu for lifu. Pooling additional copies only give you marginal improvements, so it's never worth it. It's true that some waifus are born stronger than others, but generally speaking, having good stats is what matters the most, and good runs can definitely help make up for the strength difference. You can train any waifu for the weekly PvP and still see great results. The same cannot be said for the sweaty monthly cup, but like I said, you can easily forget about that entirely. Should I disregard the cards knowing it's cheaper to go for waifus? An argument can be made that pooling for Umamusumes adds more value to your account for the same amount of gems spent on cards. It unlocks more stories, interactions, and the whole waifu package. However, I think it's best to do both, even for free-to-play players. You should still try your best to get copies of a great card, even if you can't max it right away. Raid-up reruns do exist, and there'll be a currency that functions as a duplicate replacement in the future patches. Does power creep exist? Well, yes and no. I'd go as far as to argue that power creep is the hallmark of all gacha games, and it's a matter of when and how it happens. For Umamusume, there's more nuance to it. First, cards are usually a mixed bag, with amazing and dog water cards releasing in no particular order. Some are more cratered towards a specific build, while some are universally good. You get cards like this Super Creek that's like a Sanhua from Wuwa, or this Fine Motion card that's like a Verena, or this Kitasan Black that's like Shorekeeper. And then there's cards like Belphegor's Prime that probably feels like a Lin Yang. That doesn't seem too bad, right? Well, here's the kicker. Like I've mentioned before, a new campaign is added to the training mode every 6 months. Remember how new campaigns are supposed to bring new meta? Some incentivize you to race more, while others give you better training bonuses. And because the newer campaigns always power creep previous ones, so do the cards that are made for set newer campaigns. I really want to say that this is a necessary evil, since new metas keep the game fresh and exciting. But a lot of meta cards do render themselves useless the moment a new campaign drops. If there's ever a tier list for most commonly used cards across all accounts, you'll see a tier of Apex cards that expires after 6 months, and another tier of meta cards that performs less well but has better staying power. It's just part of the cycle of the game, and at this point I don't really have a bone to pick with it. All this seems kinda bad. What's the catch for free-to-play meta gamers? On the bright side, the English server, like the Taiwanese and Korean servers that came before it, has a distinct advantage. If you've played Girls Frontline 2 Exilium before, you'll know where this is going. Assuming that the release order of the banners don't change, which I doubt it would, we know exactly what will happen in the future, down to every event, campaign, and banner release. Initially, this might not seem like a lot, but for Taiwanese server players, there were plenty of guides that go over ways to spend our gems most efficiently. Different gem spending strategies and card recommendations are pushed for free-to-play, small spenders, dolphins, and whales respectively. All of this was based on what we know from the Japanese version. On top of that, Umamusume does have relatively simple monetization. The only currency you can buy are gems, with the occasional character or card ticket selector packages. While the whale ceiling is ridiculously high, I'd say the game never struck me as predatory. I also think it's fair to say that anybody with a spending issue should not play any gacha games in the first place. If you can't control how much comes out of your wallet, do yourself a favor by not playing any gacha. This game is absolutely free, and you can enjoy it however you want. Don't let the meta stop you from picking up a card with a cute waifu on it. Just keep in mind that you'll have a rough time collecting anything substantial unless you have an oil rig in your backyard. With that, part 1 of my Umamusume English pre-launch guide has come to an end. Thank you so much for watching. I've got plans on making a training mode walkthrough video, which includes a deep dive on run setups. I'll be streaming Umamusume at some point over on twitch.tv/buttnip, so feel free to drop by, say hi, or ask about the games I'm playing. Though if I'm playing Umamusume, it might be best that you direct your questions to chat since they know way more than I do. I play whatever comes to mind when I stream, but most of them are gachas, roguelites, or puzzle games. And while that's happening, I just go on long tangents about anime, Northern Lion, Windigoon, and other silly anecdotes. Again, thank you so much for watching till the end. If you find this guide helpful, please leave a like. If you have any questions about Umamusume, please leave a comment down below. I'll see you on the next one. じゃあね!